There's all this talk about tariffs and how they're going to be so bad, so big, so terrible for the U.S. economy, right? Because everyone's freaking out. The stock market's dropping. Everyone's all like, oh, it's going to be so terrible. It's going to be so bad. Trump's ruining the economy. Here's the thing, man. Tariffs are not necessarily a bad thing. Because think about it, right? Back in the heyday, think about this, right? Back in the heyday, the U.S. was an economic powerhouse, right? This was the heyday of, the 40s to say, the 80s, right? Everyone was just like, everyone looks back at that time and says, oh, it was great, everybody could buy a house, you could support a family on one income, you could work at a factory and support a family, and it was this wonderful thing. And the left will tell you, the left will say, it's because we taxed rich people, millionaires, billionaires, whatever they were at that time, at 90%, right? That's why everything was so great. Except we didn't. Because if you think about it, right, and you look at what the tax laws were back in that time, if you had a decent accountant, you were paying about 8% if you were a multimillionaire, billionaire, whatever they were back then, right? Because there were so many loopholes. So obviously the taxation was not the cause. So then the question becomes, what was? And I'll tell you right now, it was manufacturing. The U.S. used to make all of our stuff. The U.S. used to export tons of stuff, right? We were an economic powerhouse because of our manufacturing. That's also why we were able to win World War I and World War II. Because our ability to manufacture stuff for war was unmatched. There was absolutely no one in this world that could manufacture things as quickly and efficiently as we could when it came to war. Now, the Germans tried. They're pretty good at it. But the sheer number of stuff, or the sheer amount of stuff that we manufactured won us that war. Both of them, right? And yet, here we are. Nowadays, the only thing we export, really, is inflation. We send dollars, we send bonds, we send debt, right? And that's it. I mean, we aren't out here making stuff. We have all of our shit made in China or Mexico or Vietnam or wherever the hell else it's made, right? But not here. It's rare nowadays to find American-made goods. And, American-made stuff is the best in the world. Many people would say the same thing, right? Because think about it. Think about tools. Like, let's say, Snap-on or Craftsman wrenches, right? Back in the day, a Craftsman wrench was made in America, and people still want them. People will still get them on eBay or wherever else made in America because they're fucking good. Those things are built like a tank. Like, you can't break them. You can try, but you're not going to break them, right? And nowadays, if they even make them, I'm not even sure if Craftsman still makes tools, but if they do, they're made in China, because I know that 10 years ago, maybe, they still made them, and they were made in China, and they were crap. It's just shitty forged steel that is worth shit. Same thing with Snap-on. Snap-on's pretty okay. They're all right. Their tools, I'm pretty sure at this point, are made in China. I'm not entirely certain on that, so don't quote me on that. But it's the same with plenty of other tools, right? They're made in China now. They're just shitty forged metal crap, right? But American-made stuff was phenomenal. So much so that generally it was a buy it for life sort of scenario. As long as you didn't lose the damn thing, you're going to have it as long as you lived. Look at the way cars were made back in the day. Like, the Toyota Corolla, which was made in America, by the way, it was pretty much engine oil optional up until 2005-ish or so. The same thing with other vehicles that were made in the U.S., right? They're beautiful cars, gorgeous. You run them into the ground and they just keep on trucking. Same thing with appliances, right? They were phenomenal, built like tanks. They could just take every beating you threw at them and come back for more. And nowadays, everything breaks in a year or two. Now, here's the thing, right? Tariffs are going to make the cost go up, right? That's the problem. That's the whole thing with the whole tariff thing, right? Is prices are going to go up. Costs are going to go up because that's how tariffs work. The people who pay the tariff are the people who import the shit, right? Like, let's say Canada's got a tariff on maple syrup. We're going to be simple, right? We're exporting maple syrup from Vermont, sending it to Canada. Bear with me. I know it's a stupid analogy, but we're going to do it anyway. Let's say the tariff at 25%, because that's what Trump's tariffs are on Canada right now, right? That means that bottle of syrup, we're going to say it costs $10 here in the U.S. It's going to cost $12.50 in Canada, right, in U.S. dollars, because that's how it works. The people who import whatever it is are the ones who end up paying that tax. And so, obviously, stuff is going to cost more because we're going to end up paying a tax on it. But here's the good thing about tariffs that everybody either willingly ignores or is too stupid to realize. tariffs make people want to manufacture in your country. Because think about this, right? I want to sell shit to America. America's got the most money. America's got the most freaking buy-hungry consumers. So I want to sell my shit in America. Now I've got two options. I can have it made somewhere else and shipped to America, or I can make it in America. Before tariffs, when America was pretty much just like, yeah, free trade, whatever, which libertarians love that, right? They love the idea of free trade. Before tariffs, it's cheaper to make it in Mexico. It's cheaper to make it in China. It's cheaper to make it in Vietnam. Like, it is cheaper to ship it to all these different countries and then ship it to the U.S. than it is to make it in the U.S. because U.S. workers demand a fair wage, right? Whereas in China, you can pay $1 an hour for some kid to sew your shoes together, right? After tariffs, if the tariffs are high enough, right, they would look at it and say, is it worth it to ship this shit around the world and then end up selling it in the U.S.? Or is it more cost effective to just make it in the U.S.? And with tariffs, it would be more cost effective just to make it in the U.S., assuming the tariff is high enough, right? At which point, the manufacturer would say, we're going to close down our plant in China, we're going to move it to the U.S., and we're going to make our stuff in the U.S. because that is going to be cheaper, because it's the U.S. who's buying most shit, right? Obviously, Europe buys stuff, China buys some stuff, Canada buys stuff, but the U.S. is by far the richest nation and by far the biggest consumer nation, right? So at that point, the manufacturer would say, you know what? We're going to make it in the U.S. because it's going to be cheaper. We're going to make more profit doing that, so we're going to do that. Now, obviously, the stock market's not happy about that because everything in the market is short-term. The market doesn't see past 3 months because, whatever, right? And so they're upset that it's going to cost more, which means it's going to drive profit down lower. And oh no, these corporations aren't going to make 20% profit. They're only going to make 7% profit. How will we ever survive? It's fine, right? That's how it was back in the day. We'll be okay again because we've all been too spoiled with international trade. We've been too spoiled with globalism and with selling off, all of our stuff to someone else to make. And so we expect it to be super cheap to make. And we expect to make a huge profit on it because it costs so little to make. And now, the cows are coming home. And now it's a problem. Because think about this. This is something where, and I'm going to rant most of this video. I will get to the news, I promise. But think about this. This is something where people in my generation, and people even in millennial generation, now I'm Gen Z, right? But even millennials complain about the fact that boomers sold out the kids, right? Boomers sold us out. Our lives are harder than they should be. Our lives are more difficult because, you can't buy a damn house and you'll never freaking retire, right? Because Social Security probably won't be there and houses cost $350 plus grand. I mean, in the Midwest here, a normal house outside of Chicago will cost, $300,000 to $500,000 depending on where you're at. In California, it's $1 to $2 million. So I mean, we're all fucked there, right? But you got to ask, how did they sell us out? What caused this to happen? And I'll tell you right now, globalism. Because all the good jobs that were in manufacturing, that were in whatever, that only required a high school diploma, well, that got shipped over to China. That got shipped over to Mexico. Places that aren't in the U.S. because it's cheaper to ship it there, have them make it for $1 an hour, and then ship it back. Because in America, we're going to want $15, $20 an hour, right? And obviously, shipping costs are astronomical, but it's cheaper to ship it than it is to make it here. Because there are no tariffs. Because we are getting the shit end of the stick. We're just letting them walk all over us. And once we start having manufacturing back in the U.S. because we actually finally have a fucking pair of teeth, then we're going to be an economic powerhouse again. Now, will it be hard until that happens? Yeah, no, prices are going to be higher. It's going to suck. And, you see the lefties all say, oh, Trump, you promised you'd have lower prices whenever you first started this term, right? Day one, lower prices on eggs, this, that, and the other. Eggs are still expensive. Well, there's a couple things there, right? First off, I don't fully think that lefties know how chickens work. It takes a good 9 months for chickens to, produce eggs, and they killed millions, possibly even billions of chickens back, during the quote-unquote bird flu epidemic, right? Along with the same thing of, I don't think they fully understand how long it takes inflation to go back down, because even though inflation is quote-unquote moderating, that's not what that means, because inflation moderating just means it's going back to the 2% target. Prices aren't going back down. The Fed's just getting it where they want it, which is that 2% area, which means prices are still high. In fact, they're still going higher, and they will continue going higher forever, because that's how the Fed wants it, right? The Fed has a target of 2%. They want prices to continually increase by 2%, and deflation is a freaking four-letter word to economists, right? And so because of that, we're always going to have these high prices. They're never going away. Everything is always going to be more expensive. Every day you look at it, it's more expensive than the last. And that's just how it's going to go, right? So I think overall, even though it's going to suck for a year or so, maybe even 18 months, tariffs are going to be a good thing for us. And I really hope that even though Trump says these tariffs are because immigrants and these tariffs are because fentanyl, I hope he keeps them in place, honestly, because it'll be a good thing for the U.S. because we need to have manufacturing back in the U.S. We need to make our own stuff. We need to be independent and self-reliant on us, right? We shouldn't have to rely on our freaking adversaries, which is to say China, right? Which is probably one of our biggest enemies, to make most of our stuff. Like, you'd think that we would have grown a brain back in COVID, whenever, and obviously, you know, people forget about these things because people have a super short memory, but think about COVID. Masks, medicine, all that shit, made in China, right? And they stopped it from being sent to us. They were like, nope, we need it. You don't get it. So we were just shit out of luck, up the river without a paddle, right? And, you know, we should have learned from that and said, you know what? We're going to make our stuff here. At least stuff we have to have. We're going to make that here because we want to make sure we have it. But apparently we didn't, because all through Biden's term, shit was still made overseas. No manufacturing came back. And now we're starting to see, in Indiana at least, Honda is bringing back the Civic being manufactured in the U.S. There's something like 200,000 Civics are going to be made in Indiana or something like that. And hopefully we continue to see that, where manufacturers say, you know, it's going to be a really good idea to make that in the U.S. because it's going to be cheaper. And that's what we want, because we want people in the U.S. to have these jobs. Now, obviously, we don't want immigrants to get these jobs. We want American citizens to have these jobs, because that will light a fire under our economy. If this lasts, right? If we have these tariffs and manufacturing comes back and it stays, the U.S. is going to be rich again, like beyond belief. Like, we won't have to worry about trade deficits. We won't have to worry about debt because of how much money we're making, because we're making our stuff again, just like we did back in the day. If we can make this happen, if this will actually stay in place and not just be some sort of little showboat thing, then I think we'll be in a good spot. Now, on to the news, because I just ranted for 12 minutes and my apologies. Trump walks back tariffs on a wide range of goods from Mexico and Canada for 1 month. So basically, we'll talk about it. I'll read a little bit of it, but we're going to talk about it first, which is to say that Trump is pausing his tariffs on about half the goods from Mexico and like 30% of the goods from Canada for about a month, until April 2nd, right? Because he's saying it's out of respect for the president of Mexico and so on and so forth, and to aid auto industries and whatnot. And so, you know, for a month, we're not going to have these tariffs. But then they'll come back on April 2nd. Now, hopefully, Trump stops with this. Hopefully, he continues to impose the tariffs, because they're going to be good. Because think about this, right? We have this USMCA, this United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, right? With the whole trade thing, where it's supposed to be free trade between these three nations, because we're right there, right? And yet, for some interesting reason, Canada still had tariffs on the U.S. Now, from Grok, we've got Canada had, if it loads, 270% tariff on milk, 245% tariff on cheese, 298% tariff on butter. They also had tariffs in 2018 and 19 for in retaliation to our tariffs originally, and obviously they're going to have tariffs again going forward, because, you know, they're retaliating against our tariffs, which, you know, whatever. But the big thing there is that they're not these nice people that they say they are. They've been screwing us for decades. Now, it's not on all things. There are plenty of things that don't have tariffs, but they do have tariffs on us. And Mexico has the value-added tax that Europe does, right? On everything. We have to pay a 16% tax on everything that goes to Mexico. Now, it's not a tariff, because it's a VAT, right? But it's the same damn thing. So what is so bad about America putting America first that everyone's all freaking out, like, oh, this is so bad, you're going against your allies, you're backstabbing your allies, right? And it's like, no, we're not backstabbing our allies, we're just looking to take care of us first, right? It's the same thing like, say you see a homeless person on the street, right? You got enough money to get yourself some food for the dinner, for dinner, right? Like, you don't have any money because you get paid Friday, and today is Thursday. You're out of money, right? You got $20 or $10 or whatever left in your pocket. You can buy yourself a meal for dinner. But the homeless man says, well, I need to eat too. And you say, well, I just can't spare anything because I got to get myself dinner. It's the same thing here, right? It's literally us saying, you know, I got to buy myself dinner before I worry about buying you dinner. And what I mean by that is that Canada and Mexico's economies are entirely reliant on U.S. trade. Like 60 to 70% of Canada's economy, and the same thing with Mexico's economy, is literally just U.S. trade. That's what makes their countries go. And that's why Canada has their quote-unquote healthcare. Same thing with all the NATO countries, right? Because we pay for it. And Canada gets to tariff the shit out of our stuff. We don't tariff their stuff. Same thing with Mexico. They get to have that value-added tax on all of our stuff. We don't tariff their stuff. You know, I think it's probably a good idea that changes. Because we are really screwing ourselves if we don't. Anyway, President Trump on Thursday issued exemptions on tariffs for a wide range of goods coming into the U.S. from Mexico and Canada, 2 days after putting in place sweeping 25% tariffs that rattled stock markets as businesses warned the move would increase prices for consumers, which, yes, it will, but overall it will be a good thing. The exemption would apply to goods compliant with the North American Free Trade Agreement reached during Trump's first term and will last until April 2nd, when Trump plans another round of retaliatory tariffs on goods from a range of countries, which we should do. We should tariff the living shit out of everyone. Because they tariff us. So, fuck it, right? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. About half of goods coming into the U.S. from Mexico would fall under the exemption, and around 38% of goods from Canada would qualify, said a senior administration official. That includes potash, which is used in fertilizers, which, okay. But some Canadian energy products won't qualify and will be subject to a 10% tariff, and all other goods, including computers from Mexico, will be subject to the 25% tariff, the senior administration official said. Trump said, I did this as an accommodation out of respect for President Sheinbaum. He said this on Truth Social. Our relationship has been a very good one, and we are working hard together on the border, both in terms of stopping illegal aliens from entering the U.S. and likewise stopping fentanyl. Thank you to President Sheinbaum for your hard work and cooperation. The USMCA, which Trump heralded during his first term as a negotiating victory, allows goods to move between the three countries tariff-free if they follow certain rules. Those rules require that a product be made entirely in North America or be substantially transformed in North America if it is made of components from other countries. For products like autos, 75% of their content must be from North America. The tariffs for non-USMCA compliant goods could address concerns raised by past and current U.S. officials about Chinese goods being shipped into Mexico and then sent to the U.S. tariff-free without having met USMCA requirement of being substantially transformed in North America. On Tuesday, the Trump administration began charging U.S.-based companies importing goods from Canada and Mexico a 25% tariff for bringing those goods into the U.S. Trump also increased the tariff on goods from China to 20% on top of tariffs already in place from his first term in office. I thought it was 10%, but regardless, I think these tariffs are a good move, and I hope they continue. And hopefully, we get rid of the IRS so we can just subsist on tariffs like we did when the country first started, instead of, thieving from American citizens. Because for 150 years, 160 years, no, more than that, it was like 170 some odd years, because the income tax started in 1913, America survived on tariffs. That's how we funded our government. And it worked out just fine, and we were rich from it. And then we decided, you know what? We're going to steal from the American citizens instead. Hopefully we go back to, living only on tariffs for the government, right? Because it's all bloated and all crap. Hopefully Doge takes care of that. And, yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing. If we see manufacturing come back, which we should, life will be good in a year to 18 months. Hopefully that happens. Either way, guys, that's it for this video. Sorry for my long-winded rant, and sorry for being gone for a month. But regardless, make sure to smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe. Share this video with everyone you know, and I'll see you in the next one.